On the 6th day of March in the year 1943, an important and pivotal moment in the history of the Second World War unfolded in North Africa. Major General George Smith Patton Jr., a figure known for his aggressive leadership and unwavering resolve, walked purposefully into the once quiet headquarters of the United States Second Army Corps. The atmosphere inside the building was unusually subdued. A sense of tension hovered heavily in the air. Officers and staff members moved through the corridors with hesitant footsteps, their demeanors reflecting a collective sense of discomfort, uncertainty, and the implicit acknowledgement that recent failures had deeply affected their confidence. The environment seemed laden with the weight of defeat, as if the very walls absorbed the somber mood of a battered army. When Patton arrived on the scene, his presence alone altered the tone of the room. He was dressed in a finely polished helmet that gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and he carried in his holsters revolvers with handles crafted from gleaming ivory, symbols of his readiness for combat and his uncompromising attitude. His expression was stern, commanding, and unmistakably intense, making every officer present feel a mix of apprehension and respect. It was the kind of look that seemed to challenge each man to reflect on his own shortcomings and to prepare for the changes to come. By the close of Patton's first day in command, a number of officers were relieved of their duties, some demoted, others dismissed from their positions entirely. This swift and decisive action was not random, but stemmed from Patton's unwavering commitment to restore discipline and effectiveness within the ranks. As days turned into a week, the number of officers who faced relief from their roles grew significantly, eventually reaching dozens of individuals. Within just 10 days, the entire Second Army Corps had undergone such a profound transformation that it was scarcely recognizable from its former, demoralized self. Patton was dispatched to this difficult region to address a catastrophic failure. The American forces had recently suffered what was arguably their most devastating defeat in North Africa, a loss that marked the bloodiest week in their entire military campaign in the region. An entire division had been routed, and images of American soldiers surrendering, publicly and shamefully, appeared across the worldwide media, shaking the morale of the nation. The situation was dire. The man given the task of turning around this debacle was General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who entrusted Patton with a singular, urgent mission: to restore order amidst chaos, to reinstate discipline that had been shattered, and to rekindle the fighting spirit of an army that had seemingly lost its way, especially at the strategic pass known as the Kasserine Pass. What followed was one of the most aggressive, relentless leadership overhauls the military had seen in recent history. Patton embarked on a ruthless campaign of discipline enforcement, one that involved firing officers for a range of perceived failures, whether it was cowardice under fire, incompetence, being in the wrong position during critical moments, or even the minor infringement of uniform regulations, such as improperly worn helmets. His approach was harsh but effective. He systematically dismantled the morale-killing remnants of defeat. In just 10 days, this transformed, disheartened unit, once on the brink of collapse, began to resemble a cohesive, combat-ready force. This transformation came at a cost. Countless officers found themselves out of a job, removed from command not because they lacked bravery, but because they were unprepared to face the brutal realities of battle and lacked the readiness needed to lead soldiers effectively. This story is a testament to how General Patton saved the American army operating in North Africa, not by gentle persuasion or slow reforms, but through the rapid and uncompromising purging of those who had fallen short in their duties. His method was not rooted in neglect or disregard for the soldiers' courage, but in a stark recognition that readiness and discipline are the foundations of military success. The harsh measures he took, dismissing officers and reshaping the leadership, were all aimed at creating a fighting force that could confront the formidable German adversaries with renewed vigor and confidence. Turning back to the events a few months earlier, on the 14th day of February in the year 1943, the combat scenario in North Africa grew even more intense as German forces, led by Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, launched a significant offensive operation called Operation Frühlingswind, Spring Breeze. The Germans attacked American outposts around the area of Sidi Bouaid in Tunisia, pressing fiercely against the thinly spread defenses. At the time, American forces had been stationed in North Africa for barely 3 months, an extremely short period in military terms, and most of their soldiers had little or no real combat experience. Their officers, too, had seldom commanded troops under fire or in the heat of battle, rendering them inexperienced in the realities and brutalities of combat situations. They found themselves facing seasoned German veterans who had been fighting tirelessly in the desert sands for over 2 years, accumulating a wealth of combat knowledge and endurance. The American soldiers, most of whom were young men from states like Kansas and Ohio, had been assured they were the best in the world, yet now they found themselves in a desperate situation, fighting fiercely but often disorganized against a formidable and experienced enemy force. By the following day, the danger had escalated dramatically. The situation was rapidly approaching catastrophe. The German attack intensified, and on the 19th of February, Rommel's Panzer Division pushed directly through what was known as Kasserine Pass, a critical strategic point. The rapid German advance shattered the American defenses within hours, leading to a complete collapse of the front lines. Meanwhile, Major General Lloyd Fredendall, who commanded the 2nd Corps from a distant headquarters about 70 miles behind the front, proved unable to effectively coordinate a response. His command was hampered by confusion, as he was unaware of the precise whereabouts of his units. Fredendall's leadership was marked by poor planning and a tendency to blame subordinate officers for failures that ultimately stemmed from his own inadequate preparation and strategic misjudgments. When the battle finally drew to an end on the 24th of February, the toll was devastating. American forces had suffered over 6,000 casualties, a staggering loss that reflected the chaos and disarray of the engagement. The 168th Infantry Regiment alone lost 2,000 soldiers, almost all of its fighting men, and the 1st Armored Division saw their tanks, an estimated 183, destroyed or rendered useless in the hasty retreat. This series of setbacks marked a grim chapter in the North African campaign, exposing critical weaknesses in American military leadership and exposing the urgent need for a decisive change in command and strategy. It was in this crucible of adversity that the true character of leaders like Patton would be tested, and it was through their resilience and unwavering resolve that victory was ultimately forged. During a dark and turbulent chapter of World War II, hundreds of American soldiers found themselves captured by German forces, a humiliating and sobering reality for those young men. These prisoners, unfortunate victims of fierce combat, were often marched before the anxiously filming cameras of the German propaganda machine, their images broadcast across enemy territories and occupied countries. The Germans used these public displays to bolster their morale and to sow doubt and fear among the Allied populations, hoping to demonstrate their supposed superiority and to undermine the fighting spirit of the Allies. Meanwhile, high-ranking British military commanders, observing these events from behind the scenes, began to question the effectiveness of the American troops on the battlefield. Their doubts were rooted in the visible failures and the apparent lack of cohesion among the American units. These seasoned British leaders, having fought in numerous campaigns themselves, wondered whether the American soldiers possessed the fighting prowess necessary to turn the tide of the war, or if they merely lacked the proper leadership and organization required to succeed against a determined enemy. As the weeks went by, the German military assessors drew a conclusion based on their observations. They believed that American forces, while brave, were fundamentally inferior in terms of tactical coordination and command structure. They regarded the Americans as poorly directed, poorly trained, and prone to disorganization under pressure, which made them easy targets in the eyes of experienced German officers. Such an assessment became a call to action, emphasizing the immediate need for change in the American military approach. An urgent shift in tactics, leadership, and discipline was critical if the tide of battle was to turn. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was in command of the Allied operations in the European theater, understood that to reverse this negative perception and to instill confidence in his troops, decisive and strategic interventions were necessary. In this context, Eisenhower made a decision that would have a profound impact on the direction of the war effort. He knew precisely who to deploy to address these issues head-on. The man in question was a legendary figure within the army, a charismatic, tough, and highly skilled leader named General George S. Patton Jr. at the time. In March of 1943, Patton was 57 years old, a veteran of the First World War, where he had demonstrated extraordinary leadership commanding tanks and armored units. Between the two world wars, he contributed significantly to military doctrine, authoring manuals that laid the foundation for modern armored warfare strategies. Within the ranks, Patton was renowned not just for his tactical brilliance, but also for his fierce discipline and relentless pursuit of excellence. He demanded nothing less than perfection from his troops and officers alike. His reputation as a stern but effective trainer of soldiers was well-earned, and many regarded him as a no-nonsense leader whose standards were unyielding. Patton believed that the key to victory lay in rigorous discipline, which, when combined with pressure and aggressive tactics, could elevate an army from the level of mediocrity to that of a formidable fighting force. He held the conviction that American soldiers were, in essence, just as capable as their German counterparts, provided they were led correctly. His core belief was that the difference between success and failure was not innate talent or courage, but the quality of leadership and the level of training. According to Patton, with proper guidance, disciplined command, and an aggressive fighting spirit, American troops could triumph in any circumstances. They simply needed the right direction. Recognizing Patton's exceptional qualities, Eisenhower, who had worked with him for many years and trusted his operational judgment, decided that the best course of action was to place him in command of the Second Army Corps. Eisenhower understood that Patton's fiery personality and uncompromising standards were exactly what was needed to instill discipline and combat readiness in the battered and demoralized formations. While Patton's reputation also included a reputation for ruthlessness, especially toward officers who failed to meet his high standards, Eisenhower believed that this harshness was precisely what would be necessary to restore the confidence and combat effectiveness of the troops. Patton was known for his unwavering stance against incompetence. He would not hesitate to dismiss officers who failed in their duties or displayed signs of weakness, because he viewed such failures as existential threats to unit cohesion and morale. On the 6th day of March in 1943, Eisenhower made a decisive move. He relieved the commanding officer of the Second Corps, General Fredendall, whose leadership had come under heavy criticism. In his place, Eisenhower appointed George Patton as the new commander, entrusting him with the pivotal task of revitalizing the unit's fighting capabilities. Patton's orders to the Second Corps were straightforward but urgent. He instructed them to fix the glaring deficiencies, to begin fighting fiercely, and to do so without delay. The message was clear: improvement had to happen fast, or the consequences would be dire. Once installed in his new command, Patton wasted no time in establishing his authority and setting strict standards. Within hours of assuming command, he issued a series of uncompromising orders designed to shake up the entire Corps. His first rule was unequivocal: every soldier must wear their helmet and full combat gear at all times, without exceptions, recognizing that readiness and discipline could mean the difference between life and death. This directive reflected his belief that military discipline was fundamental to victory, especially in the unpredictable chaos of warfare. In addition, Patton's first act of discipline was to demonstrate his zero tolerance towards officers who showed signs of negligence or incompetence. One of the first soldiers he encountered was sitting at his desk, unprepared for combat, without a helmet on. Patton did not hesitate. He told him to pack up his belongings immediately and report to the rear, ending that officer's service upon the spot, 20 years of military service terminating in a single sentence. This ruthless approach extended to any officer seen neglecting the basic tenets of discipline, including the simple yet essential act of wearing a helmet. Officers who showed up without proper gear or uniform standards were relieved of their duties instantly, emphasizing how serious Patton was about maintaining a culture of strict readiness and accountability. Within 24 hours, the entire headquarters of the Second Corps was transformed into a model of combat preparedness, with personnel appearing as if they were about to go into battle at any moment. Patton's second major reform was his strict enforcement of military courtesy and decorum. Every soldier was told they would salute every officer, no exceptions, and adherence to courtesy became an unwavering rule. These measures were not mere formalities, but vital symbols of discipline and respect, an essential component of unified command. That night, Patton held a strategic meeting with his senior commanders, openly stating a frank and sobering truth. While American soldiers had not failed at the Battle of Cassino, it was American leadership that had faltered and fallen short. On the following day, the 7th of March in 1943, Patton personally drove to the front lines of the Second Corps. His goal was to witness firsthand the tactical situation, to observe the soldiers in action, and to assess the effectiveness of the officers' leadership on the ground. His keen eye scrutinized every detail of the battlefield environment, eager to identify weaknesses and opportunities for immediate correction. During his visit to the 1st Battalion headquarters, he found the commanding officer absent, en route to the division command post. To Patton's dismay, the officer's executive officer was unsure of the exact locations of all the battalion's companies, a fundamental failure in coordination and situational awareness. Without hesitation, Patton relieved the battalion commander on the spot, replacing him with the executive officer, who was now to serve as acting battalion commander. Patton warned that if he did not have all the company positions identified by the following day, the new officer would face the same fate. Continuing his inspection at another position further forward, Patton discovered a company command post set up over 500 yards behind the front line, a significant tactical mistake. The commander explained that he had established this rearward position because he needed to ensure effective communication and coordination with other units. Patton understood the rationale, but recognized that the tactical situation called for closer positioning to the front line. His inspection revealed how crucial it was for officers to understand battlefield realities and to position their command strategically. Any deviation from these principles could compromise the entire unit's combat readiness, a lesson Patton would not tolerate being ignored. This detailed scrutiny of the troops and their positions underscored Patton's fundamental belief. Effective leadership, strict discipline, and tactical flexibility are the backbone of victory in warfare. His interventions, though stern and sometimes ruthless, aimed solely at elevating the combat effectiveness of the Second Army Corps, transforming it from a demoralized and disorganized force into a disciplined, aggressive, and battle-ready fighting unit capable of facing the formidable enemies ahead. General Patton emphasized a fundamental principle of battlefield leadership. A company commander must be right there with his frontline troops, not positioned behind them. He firmly believed that if a commander is unable to see what his soldiers are experiencing firsthand, then effectively guiding and motivating them becomes an impossible task. This conviction led to immediate consequences for those who failed to meet these standards. Any officer who was not physically present at the front lines of the fighting zones was swiftly relieved from duty and ordered to retreat to the rear, away from the immediate hazards of combat. Over the course of the following 3 days, Patton personally conducted an extensive tour of numerous military positions and defensive setups. During these inspections, he demonstrated zero tolerance for weaknesses or incompetence. Officers who were found to be absent from the front lines or whose defensive arrangements were lacking in organization and clarity were promptly dismissed from their positions. In addition, officers unable to provide clear, accurate assessments of their tactical situation or answer straightforward questions about their defensive deployments faced the same immediate removal from their posts. Patton's rigorous approach extended beyond individual officers. He began a comprehensive evaluation of his division and regimental commanders. These seasoned leaders would be observed carefully during upcoming operations, with their performance directly influencing their future prospects. Those who exhibited competence, decisive action, and leadership qualities would be rewarded with promotions, recognizing their ability to adapt and lead effectively under pressure. Conversely, those who faltered or proved unable to meet the demanding standards would be relieved of their commands, making room for new leaders better suited to the rigors of combat. Among the officers scrutinized was Major General Orlando Ward, commanding the 1st Armored Division. Word of Patton's intense oversight quickly spread through the Second Corps, creating a tense atmosphere. Officers understood. The message was clear and uncompromising. Get to the front lines, fully comprehend your positions, and be prepared to answer any questions posed by the general or face immediate removal from duty. Every time the distant hum of a jeep's engine signaled Patton's arrival, officers and soldiers alike tensed nervously. They knew that the moment was crucial. There would be no second chances, no opportunities for mistakes. Under his gaze, a leader's true qualities would be revealed. Either they demonstrated their capacity to lead, or they faced the prospect of heading back home. This unwavering scrutiny had a profound impact on morale, creating a complex mixture of reactions among the troops. Some officers, overwhelmed by the immediate pressure, became frightened, paralyzed by the high stakes. Others found renewed energy, galvanized by the clarity of expectations and the determination to meet them. The rank-and-file soldiers noticed these shifts, recognizing that leadership was now being held strictly accountable for the disastrous defeat at Kasserine. This harsh but necessary lesson delivered a powerful message. In warfare, defeat carries consequences, and poor leadership is not merely a mistake, but a fault that must be corrected. Patton was intent on ensuring that everyone within his command understood these realities on a personal level. His approach was not limited to punitive measures. He swiftly instituted targeted tactical training aimed at addressing the deficiencies that had led to the setback at Kasserine. American tank operations, which had previously been overly cautious and defensive, underwent a complete transformation under his guidance. Patton believed tanks should be employed aggressively, enabling rapid maneuvering, bold offensive actions, and swift exploitation of breakthroughs. Tank tactics that once emphasized holding positions defensively now gave way to a strategy centered on aggressive, fast-paced operations designed to surprise and outflank the enemy. Artillery coordination, which had been notably disorganized during the Kasserine engagement, was also overhauled. Patton demanded that artillery units deliver accurate fire support within minutes of receiving a target, rather than the sluggish response times of hours that had characterized their previous efforts. This demanded a more disciplined and synchronized approach, with every fire mission carefully planned and executed with speed. Daily training exercises prioritized infantry and tank cooperation, ensuring that the soldiers understood how to fight cohesively as a combined force. American infantry, who had experienced panic and disarray when confronted by German tanks at Kasserine, learned how to fight alongside their armored counterparts, gaining confidence in their ability to counter enemy armor. Patton was emphasizing speed, aggression, and relentless action. Under his command, American forces were instructed not to waste time sitting defensively in anticipation of enemy attacks. Instead, they were to initiate offensive operations swiftly, strike hard, and maintain pressure on the enemy through continuous assault. This shift in tactical philosophy meant that opportunities for breakthrough and decisive victory would come faster than most anticipated. Indeed, these opportunities materialized sooner than anyone had predicted when the Allied High Command, particularly General Dwight D. Eisenhower, approved Patton's strategic plan to commence an offensive toward the town of Guettar. The operation was scheduled to begin on the 17th of March in the year of 1943, giving Patton just 11 days from his appointment to the moment of launching a full-scale attack. It's important to note that not every officer within the command was dismissed during this period. Patton also identified subordinates who demonstrated a solid understanding of combat leadership, a crucial trait in wartime, and entrusted them with increased responsibilities. One prominent example was Major General Omar Bradley, who was dispatched to North Africa by General Eisenhower as a special observer during the battle at Kasserine. Bradley's mission was to carefully assess the situation on the ground and evaluate the performance of the command staff. His insights were candid and precise, reflecting his deep understanding of military operations. Eisenhower placed complete trust in Bradley's judgment, valuing his objective evaluation. Following the Kasserine operation, Bradley recommended that Patton was the right person to take charge of the Second Corps, believing that under Patton's leadership, the division could be reformed into a more effective fighting force capable of turning the tide in their favor. At this pivotal moment in the campaign, General Patton took decisive steps to shape not only the strategic strength of his forces, but also their mindset and morale. Recognizing the importance of strong leadership within his ranks, he entrusted Lieutenant General Bradley with the role of Deputy Commander of the Second Army. This arrangement allowed Bradley to oversee much of the staff coordination and logistical organization, freeing Patton to concentrate on tactical decision-making and commanding the broader battlefield strategy. The partnership between these two formidable officers proved to be highly effective, forming a foundation that would sustain their operational success throughout the remainder of the conflict. In selecting the right individuals to fill key command positions, Patton prioritized those who had demonstrated exceptional qualities under pressure. He identified battalion and regimental officers who had consistently maintained discipline among their troops, even in the most challenging situations, and those who had managed to keep their units fighting bravely and effectively despite moments of extreme desperation. These accomplished officers became the core of Patton's leadership team, his trusted cadre, placing them strategically across the Second Corps to serve as examples and trainers for others. Patton's understanding of leadership was sharp and uncompromising. He expected his officers to embody the qualities of aggression, resilience, and tactical innovation. He dispatched them to train junior officers and non-commissioned officers in aggressive combat tactics, ensuring their readiness to lead by example. The men he selected had already proven themselves in combat. They had demonstrated the capacity to perform under fire and to inspire their troops. His decisions regarding personnel, although often described as harsh or ruthless, were rooted in a strict sense of fairness and purpose. Patton was not impulsively dismissing officers at random. Rather, he was systematically removing those who proved incapable of meeting his demanding standards while promoting those who exhibited competence and initiative. This clear-cut system of reward and punishment did not go unnoticed by the young officers and non-commissioned officers under his command. The pattern was unmistakable. Competence and effective leadership were met with rewards, whereas failure or cowardice resulted in removal from a position of responsibility. Such policies fostered a culture of intense competition within the ranks, an environment where each officer strove to prove their worth. No one wanted to be the next officer to be relieved of command. Instead, the goal was to be recognized as one of the aggressive, proactive leaders admired by Patton himself. This focus on excellence cultivated a commanding atmosphere, where everyone was motivated to perform at their highest level. By March 15th, Patton had already begun a comprehensive overhaul of the Second Corps' command structure. The Corps headquarters staff had undergone a thorough replacement process, and assessments of battalion and regimental commanders were actively in progress. Yet, Patton understood that personnel changes alone could not sustain a lasting transformation. The more critical challenge lay in reshaping the way these men thought about themselves and their roles, a psychological revolution that would serve as the foundation for tactical success. Perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of Patton's approach was not rooted in battlefield tactics, but in fostering a new mental attitude among his troops. Instead of viewing themselves as defeated or demoralized, American soldiers began to see themselves as a potent and dangerous fighting force capable of turning the tide of the war. Patton's leadership style was deliberately theatrical and provocative, a deliberate strategy intended to inspire confidence and resilience. His speeches, often marked by profanity and raw emotion, radiated unwavering belief in the superiority of American forces over any adversary they faced. He projected a level of certainty that was contagious, energizing soldiers who, after the setbacks in Kasserine, had been filled with doubt and uncertainty. He refused to sugarcoat the defeat or to coddle his men. Instead, he challenged them directly, stressing that victory was not just a possibility, but an expectation. He told them in no uncertain terms that they were going to win. They simply needed to prove it through their actions. This attitude was reinforced through nightly patrols, aggressive posturing, and proactive engagement, tactics designed to generate momentum and shift the psychological landscape of the battlefield. The transformation became evident in the way American forces approached combat. No longer merely reacting to German moves, they were now initiating contact, actively seeking opportunities for small, but significant victories through patrols and quick strikes. These minor successes bolstered their confidence and created a sense of momentum that grew stronger with each engagement. German intelligence reports from the month of March highlighted the change, describing American troops as more aggressive, better coordinated, and more confident than they had been just a month earlier, in February. To the surprised German commanders, this rapid improvement was startling. They had not expected such a swift turnaround. Patton's strategic goal extended beyond simple tactical reform. He was working tirelessly to rebuild the psychological resilience and fighting spirit of his soldiers. He understood that physical readiness alone was insufficient without a corresponding mental attitude. The intense discipline, strict inspections, and high standards of appearance and readiness served this purpose perfectly. When soldiers looked sharp, they not only appeared disciplined, they felt disciplined and prepared. This combination of mental and physical conditioning fostered a new sense of confidence and competence that was critical in turning the tide of their combat effectiveness. In sum, Patton's approach was holistic. Through careful personnel selection, relentless discipline, and theatrical leadership, he aimed to forge a psychologically resilient fighting force. The focus was on instilling in his soldiers the unwavering belief that they could and would defeat the Germans who had once routed them, transforming despair into confidence and retreat into aggressive forward momentum. Under his command, the American forces not only improved tactically but, more importantly, reined in their doubts and rediscovered their fighting spirit, setting the stage for their subsequent successes in the war. Units that moved with impeccable precision instinctively exuded a sense of professionalism that was hard to ignore. Every deliberate step, every perfectly coordinated maneuver conveyed a message of discipline, control, and mastery over their craft. Such meticulousness in movement cultivated an internal confidence within the troops, a belief in their competence and readiness that, in many cases, became as vital as the weapons they bore. To an outsider, these external signs of military excellence often translated into a formidable aura, a visual demonstration of a well-trained and disciplined fighting force. However, not everyone was convinced. Among the observers from Britain, there existed a notable skepticism. These British officers looked on with suspicion, convinced that the emphasis on outward appearances, strict adherence to regulations, and the seemingly superficial show of discipline might mask a deeper lack of real substance or strategic depth. They believed that such display was merely surface-level pomp, perhaps more style than substance, and were prepared to see this as a fleeting illusion rather than a true reflection of battlefield strength. But they were soon to discover that appearances could be deceiving, and that beneath the surface of swagger and regulation lay a formidable fighting force capable of decisive action. The date was the 17th of March, in the year 1943, early in the morning precisely at 5:30, when American artillery crews initiated a relentless barrage along German defensive positions near a location called Guettar. This artillery assault was not a petty candle in the dark. It was a calculated and sustained onslaught lasting a full half-hour, designed to soften the enemy lines and create chaos among the German defenders. Following this preliminary bombardment, the American infantry and armored units launched their attack, coordinated and synchronized, as if guided by the principles drilled into them through rigorous training. The initial assault was led by the 1st Infantry Division, an elite force that was no stranger to adversity. These troops bore the scars of prior failures, notably their humiliating defeat at Kasserine, where morale and reputation had been badly battered. Yet, on this day, they advanced with renewed purpose, executing the tactics Patton had relentlessly drilled into their minds: aggressive, swift, and ruthless. By midday, the American forces had pushed forward over 6 miles and succeeded in capturing the strategic town of Guettar, accomplishing this important objective ahead of the original schedule. It was a significant victory, especially considering the difficult terrain and formidable German resistance, and it demonstrated a quick, effective execution of plans that underscored the growing confidence of the American troops. Nevertheless, victory on the 19th of March was not the final chapter. On the 23rd of March, the Germans launched a significant counterattack, an aggressive, forceful push aimed at regaining lost ground. This was, in many ways, the true test of American resilience and tactical capability. Would the Second Corps, which had made impressive gains earlier, break under this renewed German assault as they had done in previous encounters at Kasserine? Or could they withstand the onslaught and prove that they had learned from past mistakes? The German forces responded with a direct frontal attack, deploying their formidable panzer divisions, the armored spearheads of the Wehrmacht, intent on smashing through American lines. But this time, the Americans had learned important lessons. Their artillery, previously a formidable force that had already demonstrated its destructiveness, was now positioned and prepared to destroy the first wave of attacking tanks. When the German tanks rolled forward, American anti-tank guns, positioned at close range, engaged with deadly precision, turning the battlefield into a scene of chaos for the attacking armor. The American infantry, instead of retreating or abandoning their posts, held their defensive positions steadfastly, resolutely refusing to break under pressure. Their discipline paid off, as the vigorous and well-coordinated counterfire and defense effectively halted the German assault in its tracks. The German attack was stopped cold, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Over 30 German tanks were destroyed in this fierce clash. The failed German counterattack marked a decisive turning point, showcasing that American forces had matured to the point where they could engage in defensive warfare against German armor with effectiveness and confidence. This victory was not merely tactical. It had a profound psychological impact, slowly healing the emotional wounds inflicted by the humiliations at Kasserine earlier in the campaign. By the beginning of April, precisely on the 7th of that month, the American military momentum had significantly increased. They had pressed forward more than 50 miles, a substantial advance considering the earlier setbacks and difficult conditions. This rapid progress proved beyond doubt that American soldiers possessed the capability to stand toe-to-toe and effectively fight against the formidable Wehrmacht. While the engagement at Guettar was not the largest battle of the North African campaign as a whole, it was undeniably among the most crucial, especially from the perspective of American military credibility. It was here that Patton's relentless and often brutal leadership style earned a definitive vindication. His vigorous and uncompromising approach to command, while controversial, had demonstrated its efficiency and effectiveness on the battlefield. However, this same leadership style also led to the downfall of many officers within the ranks, dozens, in fact, whose careers were abruptly and permanently damaged during what became known as Patton's purge. Most of those affected were officers at the Corps headquarters level, staff officers who worked behind the lines, as well as battalion-level field commanders, and even a few regimental leaders. Several officers were sent back to the United States, reassigned to training commands or staff positions far removed from combat. Their leadership in battle was deemed insufficient, their careers in the field effectively over. Some of these officers were genuinely incompetent. Their failures under the immense pressures of combat, their poor decision-making, and their inability to adapt to the brutal realities of war made their removal understandable. They simply could not meet the demanding standards required to lead soldiers effectively in the chaos of battle. However, not all who were dismissed fell into this category. A number of them were competent administrators and capable managers, men who had proven their efficiency in peacetime but lacked the aggressive spirit necessary for frontline combat leadership. Patton, with his unwavering emphasis on aggressive action and swift, decisive combat engagement, did not draw a distinction between these types of officers. To him, success in combat required bold, proactive leadership. Anyone who could not provide that was considered unsuitable and was removed accordingly. The personal toll of these purges was severe and often heartbreaking. Many officers, driven by patriotism and a desire to serve their country, had given everything, physically and emotionally, to their roles. Now, faced with sudden and ruthless dismissals, many packed their belongings quietly in the dead of night and headed back home, facing a future haunted by what-ifs and unfulfilled aspirations. The military's approach to these dismissals was both cold and efficient. No formal charges or lengthy investigations marked these sudden removals. Instead, officers were quietly reassigned with vague explanations handed down from above. This method served to safeguard the reputation and integrity of the institution while quietly removing those deemed unfit for frontline command. Such measures, while necessary from an organizational perspective, rendered the process brutal for the individuals involved. Those who remained understood a crucial lesson. In the heat of combat, leadership was unforgiving. Mistakes carried consequences, and the difference between success and failure could hinge on a single decision or lapse in judgment. Ultimately, performance and effectiveness in battle mattered far more than mere intent or goodwill, emphasizing that in war, one's ability to deliver results was the ultimate measure of worth. Throughout the duration of the war, a distinctive and unwavering military culture took root and persisted among the American armed forces, fundamentally shaping their approach to leadership, accountability, and combat effectiveness. This culture was characterized by a relentless pursuit of excellence and discipline, where failure and inadequacy were met with swift and decisive consequences. As a result, commanders who did not perform up to the high standards expected of them found themselves quickly relieved of their duties, regardless of their rank or experience. The reputation of the American forces, especially in this regard, grew as units and commanders knew that mere seniority or status could no longer shield them from scrutiny or action. Even the most senior officers, such as Orlando Ward, who was relieved of duty on the 5th of April, began to realize that military rank alone provided no immunity from the rigorous standards now actively enforced within the Army's ranks. This approach, often perceived as harsh, raises ongoing questions about its fairness towards individual officers. Many debate whether such rapid dismissals were just, or whether they unfairly ruined careers that might have otherwise contributed to long-term success. What remains undeniable, however, is that this method of leadership accountability contributed to the development of a more effective and disciplined fighting force. It was a strategy rooted in the belief that accountability at the highest levels in military command could foster a more resilient, adaptable, and aggressive army, capable of overcoming the formidable challenges posed by enemy forces. The influence of General George S. Patton, in particular, exemplified this cultural shift. Patton's brief tenure as commander of the 2nd Army Corps lasted just 40 days. On the 15th of April in the year of 1943, he was reassigned to take charge of the 1st Armored Corps, which was being prepared for the upcoming invasion of Sicily. His departure from the 2nd Corps did not quell the culture of high standards and vigorous discipline he had fostered. Instead, it was carried forward by his successor, Omar Bradley, whose leadership maintained Patton's strict standards for discipline, as well as an aggressive tactical ethos. Remarkably, the rigorous standards and no-nonsense attitude that Patton established persisted well beyond his departure. The 2nd Army Corps, under these relentless principles, went on to achieve notable success in later campaigns in Tunisia, Sicily, and Italy. The divisions that had previously been routed and shattered at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, an event that exposed weaknesses and failures, transformed into veteran units known for their combat excellence. These units, once considered inexperienced or unreliable, earned outstanding records of service and bravery in subsequent battles. Patton himself soon commanded the 7th Army during operations in Sicily and later took charge of the 3rd Army in France. Over time, he grew to become perhaps the most celebrated American ground commander of the entire Second World War, renowned for his tactical brilliance, leadership, and fierce fighting spirit. However, the purge of officers, which had become a hallmark of Patton's leadership philosophy, remained a source of controversy. Some military leaders and colleagues admired Patton's uncompromising insistence on accountability, viewing it as a necessary catalyst for wartime success. Others believed that this ruthless approach unnecessarily destroyed careers and morale, damaging the careers of capable officers who might have contributed value later on. Nonetheless, by May of the year 1943, the North African Campaign, an early and critical phase of the war, had concluded. During this campaign, American forces had demonstrated that they could effectively confront and defeat the formidable German Wehrmacht. The officers whom Patton promoted and trusted went on to illustrious careers, further validating his choices and standards. Conversely, the officers who had been relieved or dismissed vanished from military history or faded into obscurity, their careers derailed by the swift authority Patton wielded. Yet, the soldiers of the 2nd Army Corps who had suffered defeat at Kasserine Pass, and who might have felt disillusioned or demoralized initially, subsequently went on to storm beaches in Sicily and Italy. They evolved into seasoned veterans with remarkable combat records, exemplifying the transformative power of resilience and perseverance fostered under a strict and demanding leadership culture. The lessons learned from Patton's approach to leadership and discipline proved instrumental in shaping American military doctrine well beyond the war. The principles of holding commanders accountable and swiftly relieving those who failed to meet standards became core aspects of U.S. military doctrine, applying both in combat and in organizational management. While the American system emphasized rapid relief of underperforming leaders, the British military tradition favored reassigning failed commanders rather than removing them altogether, which resulted in somewhat different organizational cultures. The American methodology, with its focus on accountability and adaptability, ultimately contributed to a more flexible and resilient fighting force, capable of responding quickly to crises and changing combat conditions. Patton's determined style, however, did not go unchallenged or unpunished. His outspoken political statements and controversial opinions eventually led to his removal from command, demonstrating that even the most influential and revered officers were not immune to scrutiny or discipline. Interestingly, the very system that he helped develop, one emphasizing accountability and performance, was later employed against him, exemplifying the complex dynamics of leadership, authority, and consequence within the military hierarchy. The stark differences in the outcomes at critical moments illustrate this ongoing narrative. For instance, at the Battle of Kasserine Pass, the Second Army Corps was routed, suffering a humiliating defeat that highlighted leadership failures. Conversely, at the Battle of Guettar, Second Corps units successfully repelled German counterattacks, showcasing the impact of effective leadership and disciplined fighting principles. The decisive factor in these contrasting outcomes was leadership quality. Patton's actions, his willingness to make difficult personnel decisions and to sacrifice the careers of a few, ultimately saved the larger body of the army by restoring its fighting spirit and cohesiveness. It was at Guettar that these soldiers truly fought because they believed in themselves, in their leaders, and in the worthiness of their cause. Patton had succeeded in inspiring them to see their own value and potential, which fueled their resilience in battle. By breaking the spirit of complacency and imposing strict discipline, he made them fight with renewed determination. His ruthless sacrifices and the resultant transformation of the troops embody the overarching lesson that sometimes personal and professional suffering endured by a few could secure the safety and victory for many. In sum, Patton's approach, marked by unyielding standards, rapid accountability, and sometimes painful personnel decisions, played a crucial role in shaping the effectiveness of the American Army during the war. His leadership demonstrated that true strength often required difficult sacrifices but ultimately resulted in a more capable, adaptable, and victorious fighting force. The legacy of these strategies and doctrines extended far beyond the battlefield, influencing military thought and practice for decades to come, and reinforcing the pivotal importance of disciplined, accountable leadership amidst the chaos of war.